one other thing I want to talk to you about too before we get into the fights. Ronda Rousey been very vocal against the UFC. That is somebody though that the UFC's always actually been very kind about. Not so much, her relationship with the fans. And what do you make of Ronda Rousey kind of, complaining about that they're not prioritizing the fighters? I mean, it's a valid point, but what do you think about now all of this happening?
I mean, she's building the fight, obviously,
Yeah.
but she's 100% right. I mean, just look at I see a lot of people complaining that it's Paramount and like because there's no paywall, like the pay structure, it takes a lot of power away from the fans because they don't need to please the fans, the UFC, I mean, which is true. But if you look back at the ESPN era, we had the same problems, these watered down, awful cards, and we just have to eat it as fans. You get what you get, and if you don't like it, don't fucking watch. Which the problem is there's nowhere else to watch fights. So UFC's monopoly is a problem. But yeah, it's clear that the UFC does not care about making the best fights anymore. It used to be back in the day, if fans wanted and I think Luke Thomas was talking about this on Morning Combat recently, where if the fans, like as a whole, wanted to see a fight, that those fights would get made, whether the UFC was just in line with what fans were doing, or they were actually looking at what fans wanted, or they had different journalists in there that were better in touch with the fan base. We just don't get that now, especially looking at the White House, going back to the White House card. I mean, none of these matchups are anything that anyone asked for. No. Not one single fight is something that we asked for. So as fans, are they all bad fights? No, they're good fights, but they're not the top level fights of what you want as a hardcore fan in MMA. So the UFC just doesn't care, and they don't care to pay any of the fighters what they're worth, but especially these top level guys now, because they don't need them to come save the day for these pay-per-views. So Ronda's 100% right. I'm glad that she's going out and getting her money, her and Gina. And I think we talked about this when this fight got announced, how they were kind of going up against the White House card, given that they're a month apart. But Ronda was saying that their fight on Netflix was going to get more eyeballs, and a lot of people were saying, no way, the White House card is going to. Well, now I don't know if that's so true, just with how this is not a lot of casuals are tuning in for this. There's no Conor McGregor, there's no John Jones kind of thing. So the UFC, they just they made their money, and they're just going to put out product and appease the corporate people that own them and shareholders and Donald Trump. So that's what we're stuck with.
I mean, I think it's whether I don't know if they'll draw bigger than UFC. I think Netflix is a bigger platform. I think Netflix is the streaming platform. So there's that. I think you will draw more of a casual audience. There is probably this just thing about having a card at the White House still that I'm sure will draw some people in.
Do you think that the Francis being on the card, like that'll draw a lot of actual MMA fans to watch that now?
I think it'll add something. I mean, but if you got to be realistic about it, what did Francis really mean for the PFL, right? Was that something that, was the PFL, where a lot, it's the monopoly at the end of the day that you talked about. The UFC has, even more than the fighters, they're the marquee name. It's the UFC. And until people start kind of turning away and having other, start watching other things or making it's not going to be known. But that's hard to do because if you're an actual fan of the sport, we still know the best potential matchups are in the UFC. So
you just have to watch a lot of slop to get to those is all.
Yeah, until we get to the fights we want.